Have you ever proved that God exists? That He's real? Have you ever proved God doesn't exist and that He's not real? Hello, brethren, and all you at home. Welcome again to our study. I've told you in the past about different polls that I've read that have been conducted to prove that Christianity is a declining religion. Now, that may or may not be true, but what does appear to be true is fewer people are attending traditional church services. In many of the polls, many people state they may not go to church, but they still believe in God. Is that where you are? You're looking for meat, yet maybe all you're getting is milk, and more milk. And many have stopped attending church because they can't get the spiritual food they require or that they're looking for. They believe in God, but now some are attending smaller house groups where they can encourage and support one another. It's like iron sharpening iron. So, the point is, brethren, you believe, but what about all the others who feel they may have been misled, or who say they never believed in God in the first place? Did you just rely on someone getting up in front of you every Sunday or Saturday, as the case may be, and telling you what you should believe? Or telling you what to believe? Perhaps they should have been telling you why you should believe. Maybe you were not really into Bible study, and it eventually became weak, like a child's milky food. There's no sustenance, and there's nothing there to help your spiritual life nourish and grow. So did you ever prove the existence of God, or did you just assume? Well, let's think about this. And remember, this is not an in-depth study. So, you never proved the existence of God, and there are countless others in the same situation, and sadly, who sadly do not believe God. So let's start with, why don't you believe in God? For many young parents today, they grew up in homes that were not particularly religious. Their grandparents may have attended church, but due to society and peer pressure, their own parents began to drop out of church going. When their parents started working, or perhaps went to university, what faith they still had finally evaporated because of their new friends, the new lifestyle, their colleagues, their tutors. For some reason, your parents never taught you about God or about His love. An important point to remember now and grasp before we go any further is that Satan has this whole world deceived. And you need to stop and think about that. He will allow you, and he will encourage you to believe or disbelieve anything at all, just as long as it gets your mind off God. He will make you feel silly and confused, embarrassed to say that you believe God. In your working and social environment, you'll meet people who make statements or ask questions that you probably never even thought about, so you can't answer them. Satan is an opportunist, and all these things will come to you at just the right moment to keep you off guard and to make you feel unsure and inadequate. You don't want to be the odd man out. You may be asked such things as, why would a God of love allow all the suffering in the world? Why would a God of love allow people to burn forever in hell? Thinking these things could make you turn from God completely. You may have come to disbelieve in God because someone close to you died, and you had prayed in such hope and desperation. Did you have a bad experience with a former church, with some of the ministry? You may have decided that all religious people are the same. Better to avoid them all. Sometimes you'll recollect and you'll think about some of the religious things you may have heard your grandparents say, maybe even your own parents, and you may even quote some scriptures yourself at times, but you still say you don't believe in God. But then there are others who adamantly insist there is no God. They don't believe in God. These could be atheists, non-believers. They believe everything in our vast universe can be explained by science or by some other natural phenomenon. Therefore, God's not necessary. Many today, to a greater or lesser extent, believe in evolution. In this study, I'm not trying to disprove evolution. I just want to show you that God exists. For there's sufficient historical and archaeological evidence to confirm that the Bible is accurate. The Bible tells us that Jesus said that no one can come to him unless the Father calls him. He also said that no one can come to the Father except he chooses, except Christ chooses to reveal the Father to him. Now, I also know that those who refute the Bible don't believe that. The fact is, God is not calling everybody at this time. And that's another problem for many people. So if you're still listening to this, and you think, well, God's not choosing me, don't be too sure about that, because maybe he will. God has called people from all different age groups, from very young to very elderly. And there's an example I would like you to look at. But God put it there for us, but it's in his word. It's in the book of Daniel. Daniel said in Daniel 9, chapter 3, that he set his face to seek the Lord with prayer and fasting. And over in the next chapter, verse 12 of Daniel 10, Daniel was told, the angel came and told Daniel, from the first day that you set your heart to understand, your prayers were heard. I would say that's a precedent. Tell God you want to know him. And there's another encouraging verse in Revelation 3, verse 20. Revelation 3, verse 20. Behold, I stand at the door. This is Christ speaking. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. Perhaps you're not convinced anyone's at your door, so there's no point opening it. Well, as I say, if you're still listening, we'll take this a little further. Look around you. What do you see? Look at nature. Even in built-up towns and cities. But go to the seaside, to the mountains, country parks, national parks, and what marvels do you see there? Look for them. The first chapter of Genesis tells us God created everything. You don't believe that? Well, have you proved that it's not true? Have you proved that the God who said he did it didn't do it? Where do you think it all came from? And don't just say it happened by chance, for then you lose all credence The God of the Bible states in Isaiah 45 verse 12, God says, I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their host have I commanded. He stretched out the heavens. Have you ever travelled by sea? Well, if you're out on deck on a clear and cloudless night, the heavens are truly unbelievable. They're magnificent. It's unbelievable the number of stars there are there. I don't know how many stars there are, but the God who created them says he knows them all by name. Every one of them. Many of the indigenous peoples around this earth may not have heard about the God of the Bible. Yet many worship stars. They worship hills and mountains, rivers, lakes. They worship the something that made all that. They realized the creation declares the glory of some supernatural and all-powerful being that is worthy of awe and respect and worship. Psalm 19 verse 1. Psalm 19 verse 1, it's a psalm of David, but David says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim his handiwork. These so-called primitive tribes knew. They knew. Romans 1 verse 20, they knew that the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. That's us. Even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. You are without excuse if you say all this just happened. In nature, use the senses you were born with, and you must come to the conclusion that an all-powerful, intelligent being designed and created all this. David, who was the king of the historically provable nation of Israel, speaking to God who created him, said in Psalm 139 verse 14, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows right well. Go online. Look at the human body. Look at any body. Flora or fauna. Look at the structure, the composition. Look at all the muscles and nerves, all the different organs, and how they all function perfectly together. Think about this and be truly honest with yourself and say all this came about by chance. Yesterday morning I was watching YouTube, and I jotted the name of this down so you can look at it yourself, and I recommend you would. It's called Does the Bible, Job 40, Describe a Sauropod Dinosaur? And then it says Behemoth. And this program, it's only about 20 minutes long, and you really should look at it. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it, but many of the leading academics of this world, many leaders of industry and government, are all well-educated individuals. They would not be considered foolish by any means. Yet many of them do not believe in God. But the Word of God clearly tells us in Psalm 14 verse 1, the fool has said in his heart there is no God. By denying the evidence of the creation we see before us, God says we are fools. But you don't have to remain as fools. For just as God told Daniel, if you turn your head and seek me with all your heart, you will find me. This was reiterated to Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 29, verse 13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. You know, the Bible never tries to prove God exists. It just says He is. The very first words of the Bible tell us, in the beginning, God created. And then the following verses explain what was created and on what day they were created. All the evidence of God is there. You are without excuse. But I'm trying to see both sides of the argument. Perhaps it is possible to understand why some so-called primitive tribes and indigenous peoples began to worship what they saw in nature. But they were deceived. They imagined all sorts of gods and goddesses, physical, natural, supernatural. They quite often demanded human sacrifice. I know most of this, so far as we know, there's no human sacrifice occurring today. But these people were deceived and they began worshipping the creation rather than the Creator. The point is, these people believed in a God that they believed should be worshipped. And still today, many don't believe in any God. It's obvious then that despite the amount of evidence we see in nature, it's not enough. So let's look at this a little more. We used to talk quite a lot about prophecy. A lot more than we do now. And when you bring up prophecy, many people just switch off. Personally, I too could never really get into prophecy. Nevertheless, if you won't accept natural proof and you won't accept evidence, if you still think we're here by random chance, you owe it to yourself to at least check out some of the prophecies. So, let's look at a couple. God tells us in Isaiah 46 verse 9, Isaiah 46 verse 9, remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. God says He will tell us things that will occur, and then He will bring them to pass. Look at the Old Testament. In Isaiah 7:14. Isaiah 7 verse 14. Therefore the Lord Himself shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel. That birth occurred approximately 2,000 years ago. But the prophecy was given hundreds of years before that. Historians and biblical scholars tell us that the book of Isaiah was written somewhere by 700 BC. And it's also believed that the book of Micah was written mid-700s as well. But in Micah 5 verse 2, Micah 5 verse 2, but you, O Bethlehem, Ephratah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. So, come to the New Testament and you'll see the fulfillment of those two prophecies. In Matthew 1 verse 22, now all this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet Isaiah. We just read it, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Then in Matthew chapter 2 verse 1, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east. These two prophecies we can see and believe, for both came to pass. There are lots of other prophecies we could look at. These are just a few of the ones pointing to Christ. If you can accept these, you will certainly accept the others also. But let's take one more. Jesus was to be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. This prophecy was given in the book of Zechariah. The book of Zechariah was written in the early 500s BC. Zechariah 11 verse 12 tells us, And I said to them, If you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for him 30 pieces of silver. Then the fulfillment, come back to Matthew 26 verse 14. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said to them, What will you give me? And I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. So you see, God declared these events would occur. And that is exactly what happened. As I've said, Satan has this whole world deceived. Check it yourself in Revelation 12 verse 9. Satan has most of humanity blinded. They think he doesn't exist. Therefore you must be extra vigilant. For Peter tells us, 1 Peter 5 verse 8, Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls about, looking like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Satan is your adversary, and the Bible calls him the god of this world. 2 Corinthians 2 chapter 4 verse 4, in their case, the god of this world has blinded them. He has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. By giving place to the devil, you deny the existence of God. You don't believe God. But Jesus tells those who don't believe him in John 8 verse 42, If God were your Father, you would love me, for I came from God. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. And then in the next verse, Jesus asked the question, Why do you not understand what I say? It's because you cannot bear to hear my word. Why? The next verse, John 8:44, tells you that. Because you are of your father the devil, and you will do your father's designs. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Jesus came to reveal the Father to us. He says if we have seen him, we have seen the Father. Check Matthew 25, verses 31 to 45. Matthew 25, verses 31 to 45. For in those verses, Jesus is showing what the love of God is. all you who are in work, when you got your job, you signed a contract, and along with that was a job description. It may have been 1, 2, 3 pages, maybe more long. It explained what you were to do in your work and what your employer was to do. Well, this is God's job description. That's what you have to do, and that's what He will do. It's all in there. God is love. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. 1 John 4 verse 8. If you don't believe God, you don't know God. And you don't know what love is. You need to prove to yourself that God exists and that He loves you and wants you to love Him. Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." And Jesus calls you and me His friends. That's in John 15, verse 13. "You are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you." What does He command us? He commands us to love. Now, I'm going to finish here. And don't forget, if you have any comments, we'll be glad to hear them. But if you don't know God, if you don't believe God, pray for wisdom and revelation. In other words, knock the door and Christ will answer. Thank you.